When you look at an image, you don't see a grid of pixel numbers. You see structures, shapes, patterns, but the traditional neural network doesn't. To a fully connected network, even a simple 100 by 100 image is just a long list of numbers. So the very first thing it does is to flatten it, and in that moment, pixels that were right next to each other forming important patterns become completely unrelated. For small, simple data, this can work, but as images get larger and more complex, this approach quickly breaks down. So what if we could change that? What if instead of looking at the whole image at once, we let the network look at small pieces first, just like we humans do, focusing locally, finding simple patterns, and then building them into something meaningful. That simple shift in perspective changed everything. This footage is from 1989. What you're seeing is Lynette, one of the first convolutional neural network systems that could recognize handwritten digits in real time. And what made it special was how it processed the image. Not all pixels at once, but piece by piece. That idea became the foundation of convolutional neural networks. Instead of treating every pixel independently, these networks reuse the same small set of filters across the entire image, looking for patterns wherever they appear, which means far fewer parameters, less computation, and most importantly, a much better understanding of a structure. And that's why, for images, traditional artificial neural networks didn't just fall behind, they were replaced. Now imagine a small grid of numbers called filter or kernel. Something simple like 3 by 3. You place it on a tiny patch of the image, starting in the top left corner. Then you multiply each value with the pixel beneath it. Add everything up, and that gives you a single number. That number becomes 1 pixel in a new image. Then you slide the filter slightly to the right and repeat the exact same process. Step by step, it moves across the entire image, building a new grid of values called a feature map. Technically speaking, this is a sliding dot product, often called cross-correlation. But in deep learning, we simply call it convolution. And what makes it powerful is what the numbers mean. If the filter matches a pattern in the image, the output becomes large. So over time, the feature map starts to highlight where certain patterns appear, almost like a heat map. For example, a filter might learn to detect vertical edges by responding strongly when the image shifts from dark to light. There are a couple of important parameters that control how convolution behaves. One is called the stride, which defines how many pixels the filter moves at each time. With a stride of 1, the filter slides over every possible position, checking the image in fine detail and giving a detailed feature map. But if you increase the stride, say to 2, it starts skipping some positions. The filter jumps a bit further each step. This makes the output smaller and faster to compute, but you also lose some of that fine details. So it's like a trade-off between precision versus efficiency. Another important parameter is padding. This is where we add extra pixels, usually zeros, around the border of the image. Without padding, the output naturally shrinks because the filter can't fully cover the edges. But with padding, we give the filter a bit of space to move, so the image size can stay the same and edge information isn't lost too quickly. The size of the output feature map depends on all of these factors, and this is the corresponding formula to figure it out. It tells you exactly how the spatial dimension changes after each convolution. As you stack multiple convolutional layers, the spatial size usually decreases, but it gets deeper, meaning the network trades raw spatial detail for richer and more abstract representations. After each convolution, there is one more crucial step, an activation function. Most of the time, this is something called ReLU. You can think of it like a gate. Strong signals pass through, weak ones are shut off. And that small step makes a huge difference. It introduces nonlinearity, which is essential because real-world patterns aren't just simple combination of pixels. So after each convolution, the network isn't just processing the image, it's becoming more selective, more expressive, focusing less on noise and more on what actually matters. Then comes max pooling, and this step becomes especially useful as images get larger. After the feature map is created and activated, pooling reduces its size while keeping the most important information. It looks at the small regions like 2x2 blocks and keeps only the largest values. At first, it might feel like we are throwing away information, but what we are actually doing is keeping the strongest signal and ignoring the weaker ones. So if a feature like an edge appears slightly shifted in the image, pooling still captures it. It doesn't care about the exact position, just that the feature exists is important. This gives the network a bit of flexibility. And as a bonus, it also reduces the size of the data, which becomes crucial for larger images. Now, when we move to color images, things get slightly more complex, but the core idea stays the same. Instead of a single 2D filter, we now use a filter that spans across all color channels. At each position, the filter looks at all three channels together, multiplying across all channels and summing everything together and basically combining them into a single response. So it's not just detecting spatial patterns and shapes, it's also capturing color relationships like transitions from red to blue or specific color texture. An important note is that we don't rely on just one filter for the image. We in fact use many filters. Each filter learns to detect something different. So if we use 5 filters, we get 5 different feature maps, all stacked together. Each one is like a different perspective on the same image, and together they form a much richer representation of what's actually there. One of the key reasons this works so well is weight sharing. Instead of learning a separate weight for every pixel connection, the network learns a small set of filters that are reused everywhere. This makes convolutional neural networks efficient and also encodes the idea that patterns like edges or textures can appear basically anywhere, which gives the ability to recognize features regardless of their exact position. Now, as all these convolution operations run across the entire image, something important begins to happen. The network slowly stops looking at raw pixels and starts building an understanding of the entire image. At this stage, the convolution layers have done their job. They're basically preparing information by extracting features. As we stack these layers, the network builds a hierarchy of features. In the early layers, the network picks up very simple patterns, like edges, gradients, basic contrasts, because those are the most immediate signals in raw pixel data. A few layers deeper, filters detect more complex shapes like curves and textures. Through these repeated processes, the representation of the image is gradually transformed. What started as a grid of raw pixel values becomes a structured collection of feature maps that encode where meaningful patterns exist and what kind of patterns they are. In other words, the network has learned to see, but it hasn't yet made a decision about what the image actually is. To make that transition, the network needs to move to reasoning, and this is where fully connected layers come in. Here, the structured feature maps are flattened into a single vector as a long list of learned features. And now, instead of looking locally, the network looks at everything at once. Fully connected layers act like decision makers. They take all these extracted features and learn how to combine them together. If you want a deeper understanding of how fully connected layers actually work, you can check out my previous video on neural networks, where I break down how these layers learn step by step. During training, these two parts are tightly connected. The fully connected layers produce the final output, which is then compared to the true label in order to compute how wrong the prediction is by using the loss function. The loss is then back-propagated not only through the fully connected layers, but also all the way back into the convolutional filters to update all of these parameters. Even though the convolutional layers are just extracting patterns, they're actually learning which patterns to extract based on how useful they are for the final decision. If a certain feature doesn't really help to reduce the error, its corresponding filter gets adjusted, and essentially over time, the entire network co-adapts. So the full pipeline becomes a coordinated system. Convolution extracts patterns through local operations, activation functions introduce nonlinearity and filter out weak signals, pooling compresses and stabilizes the representation, and then comes fully connected layers, which interprets the extracted features and produce predictions. And finally, backpropagation ties everything together, allowing the network to learn from the data. If you step back, the beauty of convolutional neural networks is in this collaboration. One part learns how to see, the other learns how to decide, and training ties them together so that what the network sees becomes exactly what it needs in order to make the right decision.